Good morning. Two things come to my mind this morning, both of which must be very clear to us as we approach spiritual healing work. The first one is this: the meaning of that phrase that we use so often in this work, one power. Now you will find that this idea of one power keeps coming up in every article you read, every tape you hear, almost every page of the writings. And the reason is that we have become accustomed to the idea of error, that is, some form of discord, which requires the application of some power to overcome. Ordinarily, we think of this good power as God. And by habit, all the way back from the days when the disciples believed that they had power over error through Jesus' name, to the very present time, it persists in our consciousness that evil is a power and that there is a greater power called God or good which does something to this evil power. In religious teachings, that's called God and devil, or God and Satan. In philosophy, it's called good and evil, usually spelt with a capital G and a capital E. And in metaphysics, it's usually called the immortal and the mortal, or truth over error. Now actually, if this were a true condition, our entire lifetime would be dedicated to a battleground. And we would always be the middleman. We would always be looking around for this great big power with our right hand to swat the error on the other. And this isn't really true in any spiritual realization. The truth is that whatever it is of an evil appearance isn't a power, and it is only our universal acceptance of it as power that makes us set out to war against it. If it were understood that there is no condition of earthly existence that is either good or evil, our task would be simplified. So let us start with this major point, that there is nothing and nobody, either good or evil. Now this is one of the most startling points in the message of the infinite ray, based entirely on the Master's revelation, that even Pilate, thou couldst have no power over me unless it came from the Father, and to all forms of sin and disease neither do I condemn thee, or what did hinder you. In other words, there is no power other than the power of God. And you will remember that even of himself he said, why callest thou me good? Why callest thou me good? There is but one good, the Father in heaven. Now, when we learn to look objectively at every person in this world and say you are neither good nor evil, whatever good is flowing through you is a quality of God, not of man, it's a quality of God. Whatever evil is at the moment manifesting in you is the acceptance of two powers. You have accepted this world belief that there's good and evil, and you're just indulging one or the other at the moment. Now, you divest the human being of all powers of being good or evil. You nullify the belief that evil has power, and you leave him free to be an instrument for good, for God. And you will do all of that by divesting the individual of powers of good or evil. In other words, saying you are neither good nor evil, you just exist. You just are. You just live. But you have no qualities. God alone is the quality of your being. Now do you see what you do to an individual? You make him the instrument for God. But if you give them qualities of their own, you're apt to be calling them good today and evil tomorrow, and then wanting to say they're good the day after. Whereas if you can begin right from the start, I know thee who thou art, an instrument for God, nothing of yourself, you begin to perceive the nature of Jesus' teaching. I, of my own self, can do nothing. I have no powers of good. None. I have no powers of evil. I can of my own self do nothing. But the Father, that's a different thing. That's a different thing, because now if we acknowledge the Father as all power, we can acknowledge that same power operating in every man, woman, and child in the universe. Because now it is not a personal good, it's a universal good. Now, at first, this becomes a very difficult practice, because it is human nature to attach qualities to people. As a matter of fact, it's even very fashionable to attach certain qualities of good and evil to nations and races and colors and creeds. You hear that all the time in all the papers. You would think sometimes from reading papers and magazines that there are certain good races of people in the world and certain very evil ones. Now, this has never been true in the history of the world. I suppose the very first lesson that I ever learned of a universal nature was when I started my career as a traveling man when I was 16 and a half years of age. My first travels were in Europe. I was sent from the United States to Europe as an assistant buyer. And I made a very startling discovery that English people aren't as bad as they're pictured. Of course, in the United States in those days they weren't too popular, and more especially in the families of those of us who came of English descent. We were always taught, watch out, those English people, they think they know the whole thing. But then when you went to England, you really found that English people were like Americans. There were some bad ones, but there were a lot of good ones. And there were some friendly ones and some unfriendly ones. And so the whole story was wrong, that English were this or English were that. Well, the next thing was, of course, going across the continent and finding that all Frenchmen weren't immoral. I suppose that was the biggest shock of all. And because the Frenchman, according to modern literature, is a very immoral person. But that isn't true. Certainly there are sections of France, more especially Paris, which are pretty immoral. But I think, like in all cities, they're put up there for the tourists. And so it is that in those days I traveled England and France, Holland, Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, Czechoslovakia, more of those Middle East countries. And I think that long before I was 18, I had come to the conclusion there are no good people in the world and there are no bad people in the world as such. I mean, as races. That races are all, or nations are all made up of individuals, most of whom are very good, very friendly, very nice, and a few you better watch out for. But that was just as true at home. Now then, in the years that I've traveled since then, and they told me in Switzerland that 2 years from now they will celebrate my 50th anniversary of my first visit to the Bar-o-Lac Hotel. And unless I've changed my drinking habits by then, I'm going to get some champagne. But in all those years of travel, I have found, humanly speaking, that it is literally true that there are no good people and that there are no bad people. There are just people. And people, from the human standpoint, are good or bad according to their environment, their upbringing, their education, their experience. But now I've gone a step further through my spiritual development, through these series of spiritual and inner unfoldments that have taken place in me. And I've come to see that actually we are instruments, and as spiritual instruments, we are instruments of God, and no other qualities animate us. But that because of our tabernacling on this earth so many generations, we have taken on qualities of good and evil, and now must overcome them. In other words, we have taken on the belief that we can have qualities of our own. Now, of course, I can tell you that someday the practice of psychology and psychiatry will be legally outlawed. And the reason is that it's all based on an erroneous premise. It's all based on the premise that we can look into your mind and see what's evil or good in it. And you haven't got a mind that can have evil or good in it, and they haven't found that out yet. When you go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist and they seat you or question you, it is to find out what there is in your mind that's good and evil. Well, now, 27 years of metaphysical practice has taught me that no person has ever come into my experience that had an evil quality. None. I have worked in prisons. I have been Christian Science first reader in 2 different prisons over a period of more than 3 years. I have worked with prisoners in the prisons. I've worked with them in Hawaii in the prisons. And I've discovered this: there has never been a criminal in the whole of prison history There are only men or women indulging criminal tendencies because of their ignorance. As soon as they are brought into the awareness of the truth, they lose their criminal propensity so fast that it makes your head swim. As a matter of fact, I'm barred from working in the prisons in Hawaii right now because the minister was told by the prison authorities, why is it that in 2 visits our work has done such miracles and in 10 years theirs have done none? So now I can't go back anymore. But the point is this. The reason is that the minister, the rabbi, or the priest goes in there and says, now you poor dear criminal, let me see what I can do to reform you. And so he starts telling fairy stories about how good Jesus was and we ought to emulate his example. And while the man would like to, he can't turn around and say, yes, but Jesus seems to have been well fed and I have to go out and dig for mine and this is the only way I know of getting it. Now, we go in there with an entirely different approach. We don't go in and tell an evil man he's good. We don't go in there with any of that namby-pamby stuff and say, oh, you're a spiritual idea, you're God's perfect child. None of that nonsense. But we go in with the realization you are neither good nor evil. We don't tell it to him either, he think we're crazy. Our prayer is a silent one and a secret one. You are neither good nor evil. God is your good and evil is a nothingness. And by the time that has been a conviction within me, you sitting here feel that. You feel that I'm sitting here neither praising you nor condemning you. You feel that I'm not judging you for your human weaknesses nor praising you for your human good. And therefore you say, you know, we can talk together man to man or man to woman or woman to man. In other words, on a basis of equality, because we're not full of soft soap praises for each other, which we know we're not deserving of, and neither are we sitting with criticism or condemnation. You see, it is almost as bad to sit around and praise people as it is to condemn them. Because there isn't one of us who doesn't know that humanly we're undeserving of praise. There isn't any one of us who wants any praise for anything we're doing, because we know it isn't us. It's a force driving us that's coming through from God. If we had our own will and way, I can assure you we'd be on a beach of Hawaii letting our feet get wet in the ocean. You know that. It's an impulsion, a drive that sends us out into this work and makes us serve the world. It isn't our human goodness. Everyone in this work will tell you the same thing. I mean, everyone who is a sincere and dedicated truth teacher or practitioner will tell you that they don't relish the praises that are bestowed on them because they have a feeling of an inner unworthiness. And it's true. Why callest thou me good? It isn't I who am good, it is the Father within me who is propelling himself out into this world. Ah, yes, but tomorrow you may find something in me to criticize or condemn. And I say to you, for heaven's sakes, forget it, will you? I know more about it than you do. And I'm doing more to overcome it than you ever will. Do you see that? So therefore, do not hold to condemnation unless somebody is actually, willfully violating their own integrity. Then, I mean, you can't namby-pamby with them. That is why we have had these Hitler businesses and Mussolini businesses, because people weren't willing to stand up to this flagrant violation of personal integrity. Now, but what I mean is, even while standing up for the evil, against the evils of the world and making every effort to correct them, do not sit in violent judgment of the individual as if they were personally at fault for the evils that are being manifested through them, because they can no more help it than the other one can help the good that is flowing through them. Each is following their light in accord with the way they see it. Now, we come back again to this. Call no man good or evil. try insofar as you can to hold the attitude that every individual on the face of the globe is an instrument for God, and whatever of good flows through them is God flowing through them. And the evil that men do is not a power, and nullify it for them. Help the man who's indulging evil to overcome it by knowing that it is not a power and that it cannot forever hold him in its grip. Do you see that? You help to loosen those ties. It's the same as going into a prison and silently declaring the good is God, and you're the instrument for that good. The evil that touches you is not power, and my recognition of its non-power frees you. Now do you see that you have no condemnation in your mind toward that individual? And when he looks up at you, he sees a friend in you, and he begins to trust you. But if you were to join in condemning him, as the priest and the rabbi and the minister does, and call him a criminal who ought to be reformed or ought to be punished, then he has that same rebellion at you that he has against society, and then you can't heal him. He won't any more trust you than he'll trust another member of society. Now, you have the same responsibility toward your family, and it's even more difficult in your family than it is in prison, because there you would just like to tell them outright what you think of them, and you have more of the right to. But it's only a human right, not a divine right. Actually, your attitude toward the family must be the same as it would be toward the patients who come into you for help, or the students who come to you for help. Your attitude toward family, toward patients, and toward students must be just like our attitude here. You are instruments of God. The good that I behold is God appearing. The evil that I witness is not a power, is not a presence, is not a reality, and my recognition that this evil is no part of you, is no part of man, is no part of reality, begins at once to destroy it, the same as you do if a patient came into your office very ill. Whether or not you would consciously go through this process, you should, in the beginning, with every single person who comes to you for help, you should begin to realize, silently and secretly, you are neither good nor evil. You are neither sick nor well. You are an instrument for God's grace. You are an instrument for God's health, not your own. You are an instrument for eternality, for immortality. And the qualities of human health or ill health are not real, are not power, have no law to sustain them, are not part of you. And your recognition of that does the same for their health that it's done for the evil person's morals or character. You help to separate them from the evils, and you've done it in this way, by recognizing that nobody is good or evil. Do you see that? Eventually you're going to have to do that with conditions of health. You're going to have to understand that a condition of health is neither good nor evil. In other words, that bad health isn't evil and good health isn't good. Because nothing can have qualities of their own. Only God can have qualities. Do you see that? Now, if you are going to call some condition evil, you are malpracticing. If you're going to call some condition evil, you're going to say that it has qualities apart from God. How then are you going to get back to the infinity of God's good? The only way you can do it is, regardless of this condition, it is neither good nor evil. Do you see that? Conditions have no qualities. Only God has qualities. Persons have no qualities. Only God has qualities. Animals have no qualities. Only God has qualities. Food has no qualities. Only God has qualities. So food can't fatten and food can't make thin. Because food has no qualities. God has qualities. And food has the qualities of God. Do you see that? And any other qualities aren't qualities. They are illusions, beliefs, theories. Do you see that? Now, this is really and truly the secret of healing practice. You have got to eventually come to where you understand that there can't be good weather or bad weather. Well, in the human picture, the rainy weather's good for the umbrella manufacturer and the raincoat manufacturer. It's bad for the other fellow. Sometimes it's good for the farmer and sometimes it's bad for the farmer. But actually, weather can have no condition of its own. Nothing is good or evil, we're told, except thinking makes it so. Isn't that clear? Nothing is good or evil. Just thinking makes it so. Things that are good in one state in the United States are evil in another state. You go to jail for a thing in one state that you almost get a medal for in another state. It's really true. It's really true. There are things legal in one state and illegal in another state. There are even, you'd be surprised, in a country of 48 states, there are some states in which marriages are legal and some states in which the same marriage is illegal. The courts of one state do not always recognize the marriages of the courts of another state. And so it is that you can't say anything is good or evil. It is according to what belief makes it at a particular moment. Now, it develops a very, very wonderful state of consciousness in an individual as a few years pass. And you find a situation in which you never carry around up here any mass of criticism or judgment or condemnation. You really are free and objective. You can look at a person or a situation and see it for what it appears to be, and yet never hold it in condemnation. And it makes for a whole new state of being. You'd be surprised as you travel the world and meet a few people here and there, who have acquired this sense of not judgment and not fearing. You see, when you no longer judge, you no longer fear. But the minute you've come to the see that there's nothing good or evil, there's nothing left to fear. And again, you have a whole new state of consciousness when you're not fearing black, and you're not fearing your neighbor, and you're not fearing the fellow across the border, so forth and so on. It brought about a very beautiful friendship on this trip. I got on the bus up in Cairo to go to the airport. We stopped at another hotel, and another man got on, and he said good evening, and I said good evening. Finally we're down at the station, and both had to go chasing around to find our passports, and then finally got into the waiting room, and I don't know what threw us at the same table together where we had a cup of coffee, because usually I'm alone on these trips. Very seldom does anyone speak to me on a trip, and I suppose I'm the same way. I very rarely speak to anyone, but here were the two of us at this table. Well, we had engine trouble on the way down, so it was 27 hours later before we got to Johannesburg. And our seats were separated. And yet, as we got to the end of the journey, this man said, "Where are you going to stop in Johannesburg?" I told him. He said, "Do you mind if I call you?" No, didn't mind, but it seemed strange. And yet I felt so drawn to that man. And sure enough, he called me at the hotel and invited me to his home for dinner. Well, now, you know, I never go out to dinner to anybody's home, not even in the work. And I found myself saying yes. Well, it was too quick. It all happened too quickly. I said yes, and the phone was hung up, and the date was made. But then when he called for me, I said, this is really an injustice. I said, I had no right to accept this appointment. It's something I never do. But I had no right to accept it at all, and I apologize because I am a very bad guest, and I shouldn't have imposed myself this way. Why, what do you mean? Well, I said, I'm going to tell you to begin with, I don't smoke and I don't drink, and I don't know a lot of things. He said, well, isn't that nice? We don't smoke and we don't drink, and he said, we don't know much except the love of God. And this man was a Quaker. And his family were Quakers, and we had one of the most delightful trips, visits on my entire trip, meeting and opening a whole new circle to the infinite way, because he didn't know there were such people. But he did say that all the way down he felt something that attracted me to him, and also he noticed that he and I were the only ones on the plane who didn't drink or smoke. Now, he was a little more observant than I was. I didn't notice anything, whether he smoked or drank, and I don't notice what people humanly do, because I'm so busy seeing what they spiritually are or sometimes aren't. Now, this is the point that I mean, that when you come to this place in consciousness where you are not seeing what people humanly do or don't do, you are seeing them always as an instrument of God, and even if it is revealed to you that humanly they are not what they might be, you're nullifying it for them. And so they feel that lack of condemnation emanating from you. Well, I can say this to you, that this is much more important in your healing practice than it is even in your traveling life, because there is no way to heal your patients of either sin or disease if you are holding them or the condition in judgment, criticism, condemnation to being evil. Unless you yourself can rise to where you can say, this is neither good nor evil, this just is. Any quality it has must be of God. Any other quality it seems to have is not power, is not permanence, is not reality, is not law. Do you see that? Now that's the healing state of consciousness, and I can tell you that spiritually speaking there is no other. And that brings us to the second word. Now the first, you see, is the one power. You see what I mean by one power. One power is of God. It isn't that there's one power in your body, it isn't that there's one power in your muscles, it isn't that there's one power. The only place there's one power is in God. That's the only place it exists. Now the second thing deals with the word illusion. You are all familiar with that word, but you are not familiar enough with the damage that that word has caused on earth, or rather the misunderstanding of that word. The misunderstanding of that word has ruined the whole continent of India. All of the horrors of India are bound up in the misunderstanding of that one word. Because when Gautama Buddha set out on his mission in life, he had but one object. He felt distress at the sins, poverties, diseases, and death that he witnessed on earth. And his whole heart was full of compassion to rid the earth of those, and that was the sole object of his search for God. That's what set him out on the search. These horrors and how to rid the world of them. And he had to go through 21 years of being misled by religious teachers before he finally came into the great unfathomed truth that all that exists as evil in this world is illusion. Well, of course, from the moment of that inspiration, he became a healer. People who came into his presence were automatically healed. They were automatically prospered, even though he was only a sannyasin, a beggar out on the road. Nevertheless, pretty soon, rich ashramas built up all over India around him, Why? Wealth naturally flows to an individual the very moment they know that all of the discords of the world are illusion. Just the same as diseases automatic and sins automatically evaporate in the presence of a person who knows enough not to condemn persons, things, and conditions, in the realization whatever evil I see, hear, taste, touch, or smell has no real nature, is illusory. Now, what happened later changed the history of India so that instead of making the progress out into freedom, health, and wealth that Gautama Buddha's vision entitled it to, his vision was lost for all practical purposes, and it has just become another series of stupid religions like the Christian churches. Now, the same thing that happened to India has happened to Christian Science. Christian Science also was begun with that same startling revelation that sin and disease exist only as illusion. That's where all modern metaphysics comes from, Christian Science and its original discovery of the illusory nature of error, of the illusory nature of that which presents itself to us as sin, disease, and death. And therefore, while the minister's out battling sin and the doctor's out battling disease, the Christian Scientist sits peaceably at home and says, there's no truth to it. And he goes merrily on his way, healing the sick and improving the lot of the poor and overcoming the discords of the world, those that still are able to retain the original vision. And why aren't more doing it? Because of the word illusion. You see what's happened in Christian Science, like in India. A Christian Scientist calls you on the telephone and says, I have an illusion, will you help me get rid of it? Now you see, if you really know it's an illusion, you're already rid of it. Because it only bothered you while you thought it existed as a thing. When you perceived it was illusion, the healing was over, the treatment was over. That was the end of it. But do they know that? No. They hug their illusions and carry them around to practitioners to see what practitioners can do with them. Now, I give you this sentence. There is no such thing as an externalized illusion. That ought to help you to heal anything. There is no such thing as an externalized illusion. Don't you see what an illusion is? It's a misperception. And where can a misperception be except in thought? It can't be on the body, it can't be out in the world. Look over there and see the sky sitting on the mountain. That's a misperception. But does it exist out there or up here? And look at the streetcar tracks come together in the distance. That's a misperception. That's an illusion. But is it out there on the streetcar tracks or is it up here? Now you might just as well go out and try to pull the streetcar tracks apart and get rid of the illusion. Or run over there and try to raise the sky off the mountain. That's no way to do it. Sit quietly at home. Be at peace. That is why in the old days some of our patients used to think me a very cold and cruel practitioner because I wouldn't run to their houses the minute they telephoned for me to come quickly. Well, I want to run there for the illusion's up here. I'll sit home and meet it. Oh no, come right away quick. No, I don't come right away quick. I sit home. If I come right away quick, I believe the illusion's over there in the bedroom. Then I lose my patient. See that? But if I can sit home and say, I'll sit and meet it right here, I save my case. Do you see that? Afterward, they're very grateful because they were healed, but they still think I'm mean that I didn't come and hold their hands. And it is for that reason that I have been able to conduct as big a work as I do, because I don't run around to people's homes holding their hands or sitting by their bedsides or condoling with them. I don't do it. I say to them on the telephone, or to their family if they phone, I'll take care of it, I'll take care of it, leave it with me. You go back and do whatever humanly is necessary, leave this other with me. And then I do. I sit here quietly in my room. This is my sanctuary, this room. People tell me how wonderful it is, my going all around the world. Most I see of it is a hotel room and an airplane station, because this is where my work is done. Do you see that? This is where this mail piles in, telling me about the illusions of the world. But I know the illusions up here. It's not out in those letters, and it's not in those people's bodies. And by the time I meet the illusion here, they can write me and tell me they're well. Don't you see that? I had a cable from one of your children here, from a steamship recently, about an illness, and a letter of thanks last night for it. Why, certainly, the illusion wasn't out in the steamship. Here's where the illusion was. And as soon as I realized that, the steamship was all right again. And the person on the steamship. Do you see that? Now, never believe that your patient has some serious condition that you have got to get rid of for them. Because they haven't. All they have got is some kind of an appearance which is being misunderstood as something evil. Now, it takes one with God to be a majority. One who says it isn't evil, that there is neither good nor evil out there in the world. There is only good in God, and evil is no reality. Do you see that? One with God is a majority. One understanding practitioner can take good care of a whole community. But they'll have to be a practitioner with a very firm backbone that won't allow themselves to be called out all hours of the day and night running around to hold sick people's hands. It's all right to go once in a while to an emergency where it seems necessary to quiet thought. But for the most thing, it is the wisest for the practitioner to sit at home, to live their life in God, to always remain steadfast in spiritual consciousness, not allowing the fears of the world to upset them. Then when the people of the world come with their fears, they are in a peaceful state of consciousness that can say, peace, be still, or be not afraid, it is I. And the whole discord evaporates. But if the practitioner allows themselves to accept appearances at face value, then it will be the blind leading the blind. And they'll both fall into a ditch. The practitioner must hold themselves aloof from the world, must at all times hold themselves aloof from the fears of the world, whether it's fear of war, fear of infection, fear of contagion, fear of this, that, or the other thing. The practitioner must hold themselves aloof from that, which is not closing one's eyes to anything. It's not ignoring error. No. It's holding error in its rightful place as nothing. Nothing to be feared, nothing to be hated, nothing to be loved. Nothing. Now, you do this only when you have arrived at a place of consciousness where you can understand there is neither good nor evil. You see, that's the important point. All good is God, and that's the only good there is. Don't call anything else good. Evil has no existence except as an appearance which you must translate or transform. You have already read the new chapter in the Infinite Way, the Wisdoms, and I will tell you their history. This new British edition has been so very badly done that as soon as it's sold out, the publisher is doing it over again and redoing this chapter, the Wisdoms of the Infinite Way, which he badly garbled. Each one of these paragraphs belongs by itself, completely separate from the next paragraph. It is not a whole chapter of words as it appears to be here. And The reason is this. These are revelations that were given me over a period of 2 years. In each case, I was awakened out of sleep in the middle of the night and given 1 or 2 or 3 of these, wrote them down, and for a year or 2 I used them for myself. Then I shared them with 22 of my top students, and they put them in practice for 2 years before they were allowed to be published. And that is why now they are not quite as shocking as they would be if they had just been coldly put out in print without preparation. Now listen. Begin your spiritual life with the understanding that all conflicts must be settled within your consciousness. Now, if you stop right there, as should have been done, what does that mean? Why, it means that there are no conflicts out here. So get inside, and whatever conflict you're facing in life, whether with yourself, your family, or your patients or students, meet it in here, not out there. That immediately takes my thought out of the world. That immediately takes my thought away from newspapers, away from magazines, away from fears, and it brings me back to this page. And so I see what the next paragraph is. There is never a conflict with person or condition. Wow, but that's startling. Do you see how startling that is? Because what are we battling if not persons and conditions? And here it says there is never a conflict, but rather a false concept mentally entertained about person, thing, circumstance, or condition. Therefore make the correction within rather than attempt to change anyone or anything in the without. Now just see what happens. You have to close this book now and say, I don't want to read any more for a week. I want to get that settled within me, because here is Mr. Jones, who has a condition of catarrh, and I've certainly been battling it for him and haven't been making headway. Now you get back inside with this thing, and you say, wait a minute. There is no Mr. Jones out there with catarrh? I thought there was. He's been giving me an awful battle. All right, now let's leave Mr. Jones alone and let's leave his catarrh alone. This says that this is a conflict within me. I'll agree on that. A conflict within me. What kind of a conflict? Well, certainly I'm thinking there's a sick Mr. Jones, and certainly I'm thinking that catarrh is something evil. Oh, no wonder I've got a conflict. I'm all full of illusions, huh? But there is no good or evil Mr. Jones, no sick or well Mr. Jones. Nor is there a condition called catarrh that is good or evil. Now, why do you think I've been battling that old catarrh? Now, isn't that something? It's neither good nor evil, and I'm fighting it. I guess there's been my difficulty. I've been fighting it as if it were out there instead of being a mental picture within me. Well, you know, if I keep this up for just about another 5 minutes, I'll be so at peace that I'll fall asleep. The chances are, if I do, when I wake up, there'll be a telephone call that Mr. Jones lost his catarrh. Do you see that? Yeah. You're going to find as you go through this chapter that that is exactly the thing that we have been doing. We have been fighting our patients' diseases. Sometimes we've even been fighting our patients and believing that if they were just a little more loving, that they'd get well better, or if they were more generous, or if they just read more pages of truth, and you see, it has nothing to do with them at all. It has to do with us. One with God is a majority. It has nothing to do with the patient. It has to do with us as practitioners. One with God is a majority. One with truth. Now, am I battling a person? Am I trying to improve one or heal one or reform one? Am I accepting a condition that is evil? And certainly the answer is yes in most cases. So then, when you make the correction within, rather than attempt to change anyone or anything in the without, then you'll find the difference between being a successful practitioner and one that's always battling with the discords of life and sometimes witnessing a heal up of themselves before you get a chance to get around to it. Now, again it says, acknowledge God as the substance, law, cause, and activity of all that is, and quickly refrain from meddling physically or mentally in the without. Well, my heavens, if you ever sat down quietly to see how much meddling you've been doing in the affairs and bodies of your patients, you'd be shocked with yourselves. You'd be saying, what kind of a practitioner am I? I've been trying to remove their fevers or their tumors or reduce their fevers or... Well, yes, I've been meddling in their affairs instead of withdrawing from them within myself and realizing why God constitutes their being. God is the reality of them. God is the love of their being. God is the substance of their body. God is the law of their body. God is the life of their body. Why, God is the whole government of their body, and I'm trying to meddle. Do you see that? You watch how the nature of your practice changes when you begin to practice according to these wisdoms. But you can't do it unless you have first established the basis that there is nothing good or evil. So don't begin with fear. Don't begin to think that your patient is in danger or in trouble, because there's nothing wrong with them that you need fear. There's nothing that has qualities of either good or evil. In the spiritual life, you place no labels on the world. You do not judge as to good or evil, sick or well, rich or poor. When I hear a person telling you a dozen times a day on the phone how sick they are, and what's your answer? While appearances may show forth harmony and discord, by not judging, by not agreeing that it's either good or evil, you merely know that is the only truth. Neither good nor evil, just is. Then all of a sudden from within, the divine harmony that's always there, even when it's invisible, becomes apparent. There's your secret of healing. As long as I can say there is neither good nor evil there, I can hold a receptive attitude in back of me, as if I'm always waiting to say, well, all right, God, I'm agreeing that it's neither good nor evil, but you show me what it is. Now what happens is something like this. Here is an individual showing forth all of the qualities of sickness. And I am sitting here. Now, Father, I know that this is neither good nor evil. God alone is good, and evil has no reality. Yet I'm faced with an appearance of discord. Father, reveal the truth to me. And I sit, and I'm receptive, and pretty soon the Father says, why, this is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased, and the treatment's over. Because now the truth's been revealed, that right where there seemed to be a human being, it isn't at all. This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased. This is the child of God. And then the shadows fade away. The shadows that we call disease, the shadows that we call sin, the shadows that we call fear, the shadows that we call lack. But it all has its basis in our agreeing there is nothing good or evil. So don't try to substitute good for evil. Don't try to get rid of evil and put good in its place. Just acknowledge there is no good or evil. Only God is good, and evil has no reality. Now, do you follow that? Now, you'll see, too, that the human reason won't tell you that this is true. But that as you learn to meditate, that part of you, which is greater than your intelligence, will tell you, this is the way, walk ye in it. The things of God are foolishness with man. But don't pay attention to man's opinion of good or evil. You stand by God's judgment that only God is good. Do you see that? Now, you know, this lesson this morning is one of the most powerful that we have had on this entire trip. I'm very grateful for it. I think it came out of all day yesterday and all night last night of meditation. But as you hear it again on tape, you are going to be astounded at the things that have been revealed in this lesson. So study it well when you have the tapes, when I'm not here. And be assured of this, that you must devote a full year of study to the wisdoms. And don't treat them, now that you know it, don't treat them as if they were page after page of things. Just take each paragraph separately. Study one thing at a time and treat it as if it were a separate teaching. And get it within you and then go on to the next. Because those few pages took 2 years to reveal themselves to me. Okay? Thank you, thank you.